Okay, learners, so here we have our free T7 ELU diagnostic test, 37 questions. Me and you, we're going to rock it together. Let's get started with question number 1. Which of the following words is spelled correctly? And here we have a lot of different variations of the word absence. Now, if you notice, the very first thing you want to look at, especially with spelling words, is look at what is the same. Okay, now here, you're going to notice that all of these have the same exact prefix, and that is the correct prefix. Usually if things are the same, they're going to be correct, but that is A, B, which means away from. Which makes sense. If you're absent, you're away from work, you're away from school, whatever the case may be. Now, most of us would look at this and think that it is going to be the ending of something like sense, right? Like a word like nonsense, right? Where we see this sort of ending here. And we think, okay, so yeah, like nonsense is not having sense, so absence is probably being away from sense. That makes sense, right? Unfortunately, that is wrong, and that's where this can be a little bit tricky. This is one of those English language words where this one's actually going to end in CE. Because CE as an ending is a suffix that really talks about and depicts a state of something, which is the state of you being away, right? So the answer is absence here. Okay, so that is question number 1. So we can go ahead and erase everything. We're already sort of flying here. That was a tricky one to start with because it is one where you're just gonna have to sort of study, especially those unique spelling rules to really get you going with that one. That one is absence, and we'll move on to question number 2. Now, question number 2, and a lot of the questions here on the TEAS will give you a sentence. The principal of the high school was debating whether to pursue the issue any further. Which of the following corrects an error in the sentence above? And we have debating with debating, replacing that word, replacing further with farther, replacing whether with whether, or replacing principal with principal. Okay, now here, if you know the answer, you can just go ahead and mark it off right away. But in reality, we have a lot of different options here, and all of them sort of focus on different English language rules. This first one focuses on the dropping the E word. So this one's trying to trick you by having the full word here. That one, I want my highlighter, where you see this full word debate. And like, oh, I debate with an ing. But oftentimes in English, when you have the ing suffix at the end, you drop that E. So this one is incorrect. We actually do like that word debating there as it is without the E. The next one's further with farther. Now, farther, because of that word far, that is taking it a distance. Okay? So if you're running farther, that makes sense. But taking an issue to the next level, that is further. So again, that one using process elimination, that one's also correct. So in this case, it's not an error. Now, whether with whether, the sort of weather that is here in our option is the sort of weather that is like the sunshine. Oop, I don't want green there. The sun is not green. I want yellow. That is that sort of sun, right? So, and weather is whether or not, the option between two things. So that one is also correct. And that leaves us with principal versus principal. And that one is the wrong answer, which in this case makes it the right answer for us. We're looking for the error, right? Now, the biggest thing is principal with the LE. That is like a rule, like a principle you stand by. Principal with the AL is the person that is the most important, or how I like to think of it, and I learned in school, is the principal of a school is also your pal. It's a little corny, but it's an easy way to remember that one. All right, so that one is our correct answer. So again, we have 2 for 2 so far of our 37, just a little bit more to go. We're doing great here. So let's choose our correct answer and on to the next one. All right, so on to question number 3. Which of the following demonstrates correct punctuation? Is it our first option? We will study 3 sources of electrical power: solar, wind, and tidal energy. Number 2, we will be studying 3 sources of electrical power, solar, wind, and tidal energy. 3, we will be studying 3 sources of electrical power, solar, wind, and tidal energy. Or our last one, we will study 3 sources of electrical power that are solar, wind, and tidal energy. So for this one, we're looking at an initial clause, which is a claim. A clause is a part of a sentence. So we have initial clause here. That is a claim here, and that clause looks like this. We'll highlight it in blue for us. And those are all the we will be studying 3 sources of electrical power. Those are throughout here. And then we're looking at a list, and I'll highlight the list in green. And those are the 3 types of energy: solar, wind, and tidal. All awesome renewable resources. Okay, so here, the rule is this. All the ones in green are looking at the same exact structure here. It's a list of 3 or more. So all of them do have, I'll highlight in yellow, all of them on the first one, all of them do have those commas in between our list of 3 or more, right? Including that Oxford comma, which I love, TEAS loves. We'll get into it later. So we're really gonna be looking at this section here in blue and looking at that initial clause that is a claim. Now, when an initial clause is a claim and is also an independent clause, which means it can stand on its own. It doesn't need anything else to help it. Those are going to require a colon. A colon, if you've never seen one before, is 2 periods, one stacked on top of another. All right, so when those 3 things are let, we use a colon. Now here, we're going to focus on each one of these. We will study 3 sources of electrical power. Is it an independent clause? Is it a sentence? You say we will study 3 sources of electrical power to somebody, I'm wondering what they are, but that is a sentence. I'm not going to look at you like you're crazy, right? So that one is a independent clause and it is a claim. So unfortunately, that one does not work, right? We will be studying 3 sources of electrical power. Again, same exact sentence, but it has that comma there instead of the colon. Also incorrect. This one features a colon. That means ding, ding, ding. That is our correct answer. Now you might be saying, well, Johnny, right? This one also has that colon. Why isn't this one the correct answer? And the real reason why is because of this dreaded little ending part of that clause right there, that are, because that does not make an independent clause. We will be studying 3 sources of electrical power that are. If I stop there and I didn't say anything else, you look at me like, yeah, what are they, right? It's not a complete sentence, which means it's not an independent clause, which means, unfortunately, that one does not work. All right, so that is why it is really option 3. If you're going A, B, C, D, it would be letter C with the colon. So we're going to keep on moving on through. Hopefully you got that one right on your own. If not, check out our lessons on Nerve Stuff. I have a whole lesson on different clauses and punctuation, in sentence punctuation like that. Question number 4, we're looking at end sentence punctuation here. Which of the following options correctly completes the sentence above? Let's read the sentence. Where do you recommend scheduling a pedicure appointment around here? Now notice, first, I think it's a great tip that I love to just plug in what that says immediately, right? This makes it easier for me to read. I find it saves myself a little bit of time too on the test. Something just to practice during your test prep. So here we're looking at where do you recommend scheduling a pedicure appointment? Somebody wants to get their feet done. They want to know where is the best place to schedule an appointment. Now here, if you notice, all of them are saying around here, which is great, which means we only have to focus on one thing. And that one thing we have to focus on is our end punctuation. This one has absolutely nothing. So this one has no punctuation. This one has a question mark. This one has an exclamation point. And this one has a period. Okay. So first, is this a complete sentence? Where do you recommend scheduling a pedicure appointment around here? Yes, that is a complete sentence. It is not a dependent clause. It is not an incomplete sentence. So that means we do need some punctuation. So let's cross that one off instantly. Now, is this a question? Yes. Why? Because of this target word right here. Where? When you have words like who, what, when, where, why, and how before a question, why did you choose that nail color, right? How did you like your experience at that nail salon? All those questions. Or if you have that little uptick when you read it, where do you recommend scheduling a pedicure appointment? Around here? That little uptick in voice while you're reading, that means it is a question, which means you need a question mark. So going through the rest of them, why would you not use an exclamation point? Because exclamation points for screaming. That is a very aggressive way to ask for a pedicure appointment. Let's cross that one off. And why does it not have a period? Why? Because it's a question. So that one also is incorrect. Okay. So question mark or questions. And again, those 5 W's in the H, who, what, when, where, why, and how, super, super helpful. Those are most likely, more often than not, going to be for questions. All right, so here we have somebody baking some soft, fluffy biscuits for number 5. Sounds excellent. I'm a little hungry myself. So which of the following options correctly completes the sentence above? Is it soft and fluffy biscuits? Soft, fluffy, comma biscuits? Soft, fluffy biscuits with no punctuation? Or soft, comma, fluffy biscuits? So here we have a brand new term, and we had what we call an adjective, and we have 2 of them here. Now, adjectives are words that are used to describe a noun, okay? Adjectives could be, they are a fast runner. You could say they are a runner. That'd be true, but saying fast denotes how the speed at which they're running. So it's describing how they run, okay? So adjectives, we have that the biscuits are soft and fluffy, makes them sound absolutely delicious. So when we have 2 adjectives back to back, and they are coordinating, which means they are working together. And how do we know if they're working together? Are they describing the same thing? So when we have something like a biscuit that is soft and fluffy, those both describe that biscuit. So we know they're coordinating, right? So we have 2 adjectives here. We know they're coordinating. That means they need a comma in between them. Which one has a comma between them? Ding, ding, ding. Soft, fluffy biscuits. Now, why would you not put it here? Because that is not between the 2 adjectives. That is between the 2 adjectives and the noun. The noun is the biscuit. All right. So there we go. Number 5, another one completed. Hope you're doing excellent with this on your own. I hope I'm being some level of help for you as we move on to number 6. My sister, a single mother of 2, has many tips on finding deals at the grocery store. Which of the following options correctly completes the sentence above? Now for this one, we have what is called a non-essential clause. Now, what does that mean? It means we have a clause that is not needed. Again, if you're an essential worker, it means you gotta be at work, like society relies on you, nurses, essential workers. What is a non-essential clause? It means, hey, we really don't need that part of the sentence. Now, what do you think is a part of the sentence that you do not need? Hopefully, you are saying a single mother of 2. Now, is that part of the sentence important? Yes. Does it give detail? Yes. Is it necessary? Unfortunately, no. How can you check? The easy way is to read the sentence without it. My sister has many tips on finding deals at the grocery store. Does that make sense as a sentence? Yeah, it does, right? Now, of course, is the part where where she's a single mother of two like a helpful tip about who this person is? Yes, but is it needed for the sentence? Unfortunately, no. Now, when you have a non-essential clause, you set it off with 2 commas. You're set it off with 2 commas. You have 2 of them. Where? Before, and you guessed it, after that clause. So if you notice on the one that we highlighted, this one has it before and after that clause, which means that is our correct answer. Now you might be looking at it and say, well, Johnny, again, help me explain, help me understand. Why can't I just say my sister, period, a single mother of 2, comma, has many tips on finding deals at the grocery store? Well, my sister, period, doesn't make sense as a sentence. You can't go to somebody in the street or in the hallways of your school and say, my sister. And you're like, my sister what? There is a subject there. There's no predicate. There's no verb. There's no action. Okay? So that is why we use the comma for the non-essential clause, which makes that one the correct answer. All right, so we're going to choose B as our correct answer. And we're going to keep on moving and grooving. All right, number 7. First, please register with a valid email address. Which of the following options correctly completes the sentence above? So notice, very often at TEAS, they give us a sentence and they say, hey, make this sentence whole, make it correct. So for this one, what do we do? Now here we have what is called an introductory adverb. Okay, now with an introductory adverb, it does require a comma after the adverb. What is the adverb here? The adverb is first. Now, if you did not know that, right, how would you approach this question? Because now kind of already gave the question away, answer away. It's C, right? How do we handle this? The only difference between 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, our 4 answer options, is the punctuation. This one has no punctuation here. This one has a semicolon. This one has a comma. This one has a colon. Okay, so if you're using cross-examination, if you're actually absolutely stuck on test day, which sometimes you are, I love to read these sort of things out loud, and I listen for pauses. First, please register with a valid email address. Notice how there's a natural pause there. Let me read it one more time. First, please register with a valid email address. That natural pause there. Now that pause means we need some level of punctuation, which automatically crosses off this one, leaving you with a 1 in 3 shot. So even if you didn't know the rule, that's a great way to approach it. All right, but fortunately for us, we know the rule. We study with Nurse Hub. So we're going to mark the correct answer with the comma, and we're going to move on to question number 8. Which of the following sentences shows the correct use of punctuation marks? So first, notice a different type of question here. No longer do we have the sentence at the top of the page. Instead, we are just dealing with 4 separate sentences. Now, they're all saying the same exact thing, which is great, all right? How did you become such a good cook? Grandma asked Carly at dinner. So we have a conversation between Grandma and Carly, where Grandma asks, hey, how did you become such a good cook? Pretty nice statement, right? Now here, if you look at it, if all of them are the same, right? And if you notice, I'll use my highlighter to show you in blue. If you notice, all of them have the question mark here. So don't look at that sort of punctuation. All of them have a period at the end. So what do we have to focus on? Well, we have to focus on what's in green here, which are these quotes. This one, we're looking at quote rules. Now, here's also where it gets tricky. This thing, right? A single quotation mark is used, it looks like an apostrophe. It's just going the other way. It's used for quotes inside of a quote. Like if you're quoting a book that also included, like, Tom said this, then you would use the quote inside the quote. Fortunately, we don't have that here. That's a little way that TEAS can sometimes trick you. So you got to be really careful and look at that punctuation. So let's mark that one off right away, because tricky ATI on that one. We don't like that one. All right, so now looking at the rest. Why do you use quotes? You don't know how to spell it? They are spelled like this: quotation marks. And they look like this. Just two little lines. And why do we use them? To mark when someone's speaking. So where do the quotation marks go? Around where someone's speaking. So let's look at the first one. We have the quotation marks at the beginning where it says, how did you become such a good cook? And at the end of that statement. So that one so far looks pretty good. So let's keep on moving. Second one, beginning, how did you become such a good cook? Grandma asked Carly at dinner. Now this means that this part right here is part of the quote. That doesn't make any sense. So let's cross that one off. Now this one, we get tricky. Because grandma is asking the question, the punctuation is going to, and it's because it's a complete sentence, it is going to go inside the quotation marks. So that one's also incorrect. So we were right on our gut, first reading of option number 1, and that is our correct answer. So there you go, quotation marks. Used for when people are speaking. So now if you're reading in a book, reading a newspaper article, or reading on a news app that you use, you now got it. You know why they're using them. You know how they're used too. All right, let's keep moving. To prepare the entree, the chef makes olive oil, chicken, and vegetables. Which of the following correctly punctuates the sentence above? Okay, so here we have an introductory clause, but the real focus here is going to be on a list of 3 or more items. Now, when you have a list of 3 or more items, it is imperative that you put a comma between each one. Okay? So if we look, every single one of these has a comma after the introductory clause, which is great to prepare the entree, because it's a dependent clause, and it needs that independent clause of the chef makes olive oil, chicken, and vegetables as part of it. So we have a comma at the beginning there. It's the second part of our sentence. So we're really going to focus on everything after that piece. So the chef makes olive oil, chicken, and vegetables. So now we got to ask ourselves, what is the chef mixing? What are our lists? What's part of that list of 3 or more items? Now here it is the olive oil, the chicken, and the vegetables. So let's look at where we're punctuating here, okay? Here we just have the chef mixed olive oil, chicken, and vegetables. Yeah, there's nothing separating that. Even if you read it out loud, to prepare the entree, the chef makes olive oil, chicken, and vegetables. Ooh, that sounds rough. That sounds rushed. It sounds rough. I don't like it. Let's cross it off. To prepare the entree, the chef mixed olive oil, chicken, and vegetables. Looks pretty good. Let's hold on to that one. We're not sure. There might be a better one. Let's take a look at number 3. To prepare the entree, the chef mixed olive, oil, chicken, and vegetables. Ooh, what the heck is oiled chicken? That sounds like greasy chicken that's also raw. I don't like it. That's not a cooking dish I know. And also, we have it right after the verb of mixed. Doesn't really make sense. crossing that one off. And finally, to pair the entree, the chef mixed olive oil chicken and vegetables. Now here we know we have a list of 3 or more items. It makes sense that's olive oil, chicken, and vegetables. So this one is going to be our correct answer. Over it one more time with a green marker, make it look a little better. Let's go nice little highlight there, and we will move on. That is our correct answer. So again, list of 3 or more items. You definitely want to have commas in between those ones, including the last one. It's a really quick note, just while I'm here. This one here is really, really important. It's called the Oxford comma. It is the one just before the last item, before that word and. There are, in the English community, there is a lot of infighting about whether or not this is an appropriate use of punctuation. I love the Oxford comma. More importantly, TEAS loves the Oxford comma. So we love the Oxford comma, and we are going to use it on our test. All right? Just a little note, one last one about 3 or more list items. We'll move on to question number 10. We're at the decade mark. We have 27 to go after this one. You can take a little break, press pause, grab yourself some popcorn, maybe like a seltzer or a bubbly water or like a juice or something, and come back. We're going to go into question number 10. Question number 10. Despite owning a car, Michelle takes the bus to work every morning. So here, back to our black, we have a dependent clause, sentence part, right? That goes directly into an independent clause. Now, the rule is when you have a dependent clause that goes into an independent clause, you have a comma to separate them. Okay? So despite owning a car, how do we know that's a dependent clause? Well, dependent means it needs something, right? It's like a baby is dependent on its family for care, right? And the baby needs the family, right? A dependent clause needs other pieces to make it whole. In this case, it really does need an adjective, right? It needs a predicate. So despite owning a car, Michelle takes the bus to work every morning. So if we just say Michelle takes the bus to work every morning, that works. So that is an independent clause. So we have a dependent clause, check, and an independent clause, check. What do we do in between them? We put the comma right there. Right, there is our answer. So we're keep like at number 10, we're already there. Hopefully if you got your snack and your beverage, you're enjoying them while you're watching me help you navigate this TEAS diagnostic. And we're gonna move on to question number 11. In history of Turkey, notice that is in quotation marks. That's important, right? We love our little details. Porter refuted the notion that such a link exists. Which of the following options correctly completes the sentence above? So here, we're looking for a citation. Now, why do we use citations? To avoid plagiarism. We don't like plagiarism. Plagiarism is really nasty, especially in the academic setting and in the professional setting. You definitely don't want to do it. So let's define what these words are. What is a citation? A citation is saying where something that you researched or something that you referenced in a paper or an article, where it came from. Okay? So it's just saying, hey, this is where I got this work. What is plagiarism? Plagiarism is when you don't give other people credit for their work. It is try to pass it off as your own, or you make a mistake, and it is a really, really rough academic penalty and professional penalty. All right. So no matter what format you're using, you're in English class, you might be using MLA, that's the Modern Languages Association. If you're in the medical field, you might be using APA. All right. In both of these, they use parentheses. They use the page number that it starts with to where it ends. And that's where your information ends. And then it closes off with a period at the end. Which one does that? Boom, right here. So that's just knowing the rules. There's no real trick. It's just to make sure that when you get to nursing school, you're going to cite things and you're going to cite them correctly using those parentheses. Afterwards, you have to do like a works cited page for MLA or footnotes for APA, but that's how you do an in-text citation. So if you didn't know, now you know. Learn something new today. Kind of cool. All right, question number 12. We're at the dozen mark. Our mail carrier, blank, it could be the packages on our doorstep, and left the packages on our doorstep, left the packages, colon, on our doorstep, or left the packages on our doorstep. Which of the following predicates correctly completes the sentence above? So boom, first thing, I said it a couple times. New word, right? What is a predicate? A predicate is saying what the subject is doing. So who's the subject in the sentence? Our mail carrier, our mail person, and it's what they are doing, right? Because if you just said our mail carrier, you'd be like, your mail carrier what? Rides a unicycle, hula hoops while they deliver mail. What is it, right? We need to know what they're doing. In this case, it's leaving packages on the doorstep. So when you have a predicate like this, right, you need to have, the biggest thing is you need some sort of verb. In this case, is going to be the action. Okay. So in most predicates, they're going to begin with that verb. All right. So which one does that? Which one does that? And which is the verb here? The verb here is left, right? Because that's what they're doing. They're leaving the packages on the doorstep. So which ones begin with the verb? This one and this one. So we can cross off our first two. All right. So what's the difference between them? This colon here. Oop. Highlight time. This colon here. On this sort of sentence, there's no need for a colon here. We're not looking at a list that is preceding, a clause that's preceding a list. So we don't need that one. So that one we're also going to cross off, leaving ourselves with this one. All right. So there you go. Learned all about predicates. And we'll move on to question number 13. All right. So question number 13, our baker's dozen of questions. Baker sometimes throws one in extra because they like it. All right, brand new question type for the T7. So if you took the T6, you did not see a question like this. And what do I mean by this? The biggest difference here is this, please select all that apply. So if you notice, you're not just choosing one answer here. You can actually choose multiple answers here. So more than one are correct, but you only get it right and you only get all the points if you get all of them correct. All right. So here we have the question, which of the following are complete sentences from the passage? So here we have a passage and we have to look at which ones are the complete sentences. Now you have two options here. If you feel super, super confident, you can go right to here and just read them and say, okay, which one, is that a complete sentence? Is that a complete sentence? Is that a complete sentence? Or you can start by reading in the passage here, which we'll do. And then I like to mark which ones are complete sentences, which ones make sense, okay? So let's read it together. The night before Kendra left for college, she couldn't sleep. All right, is that one a complete sentence? Yeah, looks good. So let's just mark it down right there, all right? Thoughts in her head about what this adventure would bring. Oh, that's whose thoughts, right? That's not a sentence. She wondered what her roommate would be like, whether or not she would easily find all her classes, and which extracurricular organization she might join. So we have our subject there, she. She wondered, there's our verb. And we have our list of 3 or more. Yeah, that's a sentence. She knew with certainty that she could count on new, better experiences throughout the next chapter. She knew, and what she knew of her life, which she couldn't wait to begin. So here we're looking at a secondary object here, and then the verbs at the end. Really tough sentence structure that doesn't make any sense there. So we have 3 sentences here, right? And if you notice, the same 3 sentences here. So let's mark all, let's first erase our work here, and let's mark all these off. So again, with these, you have to choose multiple, right? And really, you don't have a ton of time, so use your best instincts and use your resources. In this case, the sentence. So we have, she wondered what our roommates would be like. And I have for Kendra left for college. And she knew with certainty. There are our answers on that one. All right, question number 14. Which of the following sentences is grammatically correct? Number 1, a perfect fit, comma, she purchased a dress from her favorite store. 2, from her favorite store, comma, she purchased a dress that fit perfectly. 3, she purchased a perfectly fitted dress from her favorite store. And 4, she purchased a dress from her favorite store that fit perfectly. So now if you notice, all of these are different sentence structures. So we know we're no longer looking at just punctuation like we were in our first few. In this case, we are looking at what we like to call modifiers. Now, what are modifiers? Modifiers are something that modify or change or alter a noun, right? So instead of a dress, it is now a perfectly fitted dress. So here we're really looking at that word, that term, that phrase of perfectly fit. Now here, we're also looking at misplaced modifiers, because modifiers really like to be right next to what they're modifying. Okay, so let's look at these and use our cross-elimination to cross some of these off. So number 1, a perfect fit, she purchased a dress from her favorite store. That makes it look like the person, and she is a perfect fit. So that one doesn't work for us, so let's cross it off. From her favorite store, she purchased a dress that fit perfectly. Now this one looks okay, right? But we do have that word "that" there in between. All right, so let's just keep that in mind. It's a good fit, but is it the best? She purchased a perfectly fitted dress from her favorite store. Ooh, this one's promising. It is right next to it, directly next to it. All right, so this one looks good. Honestly, it looks better than number 2. And finally, number 4, she purchased a dress from her favorite store that fit perfectly. So this makes it look like the store fit perfectly. I'm not sure if you ever try to try on a store. Doesn't really work that way. All right, so now we're between these two. Biggest thing about modifiers, I like to be right next to it. This one is right next to it. So that is our correct answer. So again, sometimes with the TEAS and with a lot of standardized tests like this, it's not about the right answer. Sometimes there are multiple that are right. It's about the best answer. All right, next one. Number 15, the head of pediatrics blank 4 children of her own. Which of the following options completes the sentence above? Is it the head of pediatrics will have 4 children of her own? The head of pediatrics has 4 children of her own? The head of pediatrics has had 4 children of her own? Or the head of pediatrics have 4 children of her own? All right, so now we're looking at subject, subject-verb agreement. So we have our subject, the head of pediatrics, and our verb is some sort of form of have, has, will have, etc. Okay, so this, let's just mark it. So we have nouns or a subject, and we have all of our verbs or parts of our predicates here. All right. Now, when we have subject-verb agreement, we are looking for the subject and the verb to match up in their type. Okay. Now, that means, is it a singular? Which means, is it one or more? Is it a plural, which means like a group? And here, even though this ends in an S, we are actually looking at the head of pediatrics. That is one person, right? That is one healthcare worker. That is the head of pediatrics. So that is a singular. Now, so these have to be singular, right? So let's take a look. Which ones are singular, right? First one, will have, is singular. Has, that is singular. Has had is singular. Ooh, have, no good. So we already crossed one off. Now we want to look at what tense it's looking at. The head of pediatrics will have 4 children of her own. Ooh, that's like a weird prediction. I'm not like a fortune teller. I'm not a mind reader. You will have 4 children. We're not doing that in the sentence, right? So that is not correct. Has is singular. It's present. I'm going to guess head of pediatrics still has these children. So we're going to keep that one in mind. And has had, oof. Has had is like an ongoing action, but also kind of puts it like she's had the kids, she's done with them. It's not the right tone. So we're going to cross that one off too, leaving has as our correct answer for our subject-verb agreement. All right, so we learned something else today. We have a whole video lesson series and practice questions on subject-verb agreement. If you're kind of stuck on those ones, need a little bit more. Right on nursehub.com for you. All right, question 16. Here, we're looking at the author's tone. So here, notice I had a massive, well, not massive, it's only a few sentences, but I have this passage here. This passage looks a little daunting when you're taking the test. So here, I like to look at the question first, and it says, what is the author's tone? All right, so tone is looking at like the attitude and the feeling that we want to, that you feel as a reader, because that's what the writer's trying to get you. He's trying to get you to feel something, okay? So let's read the passage, and then let's figure out the tone. Before we do that, let's take a look at our options. First is an objective tone. An objective is looking at the facts. Regretful. This is looking back at something with regret, looking at something that you wish you could change. So we're wishing for change on that one. Like, I wish I could just do that one thing, ask that one person out, do a little bit better in that class, et cetera, et cetera. Indignant. Oof, indignant. Indignant is being angry or annoyed. And finally, nostalgic is looking back at the past, but staying positive, kind of like you miss it. It's kind of like when you watch an old show that you watched as a kid, and you're like, oh, you know, you're brought back to like that living room you sat in, who you watched it with, what you ate at the movie theater, those little things. So that's being nostalgic, right? So let's read the passage now. The school, located atop one of the highest and most beautiful mountains of the area, witnessed snowy and long winters. During the cold days, all pupils, including myself, carried a couple of hot baked potatoes in our pockets and into the freezing classrooms. This way, we could keep ourselves warm in the morning and then have a delicious and ready-to-eat snack at noon. Modern heating has its advantages, but I have yet to find something that tastes as good and as comforting as those potatoes did. Okay, so looking at our tone, right? About this story about the school and the potatoes, right? So first, is it objective? Is it staying just the facts? Well, it does talk about where the school was. It does talk about that they did bring potatoes. So technically it's right, but we're not sure. So let's just put a nice little question mark next to that one for now. We'll keep an eye on that one. Is it wishing for change? Is it wishing we went back and did something else? No, that's not saying like, I wish I went to a different school. So let's cross that one off. Is it being angry and annoyed or indignant? No, it's not saying the potatoes were like so ridiculous they burnt my hands. No, it's not being angry. Nostalgic. It's looking at the past in a positive light. Now here, you look at this last line. I've yet to find something good and comforting as those potatoes, that tastes as good and comforting as those potatoes did. That's like looking back at that and being like, those are the good old days. That's being nostalgic. That is our correct answer. So again, sometimes it's not looking at which one is the right answer. Sometimes it's looking at which one is the best. All right, so there we go. Question number 16. Let's erase our work. We'll mark down our correct answer. And there you go. You learned a little bit about author's tone today. Think nostalgic. All right, question number 17. Again, we have a huge passage here. Not huge, but we have a passage. And so we're going to read the question first. All right. Which of the following sentences from the passage does not follow the overall tone? Look at that. We have that word again, right? Overall tone of the passage. So here, even though you have these answers down here, right? Even though you have them, you do need the rest of what we like to call context, how they flow together to really understand this one. So you can't just go back and just go forward and read all the answers and choose the best one. You can't do that for this sort of one. You have to read that passage. And we're looking for the one that doesn't fit the rest of the tone, the way the rest of the one makes us feel. All right, so let's read. Living in one of the warmest countries on Earth poses many challenges, as the inhabitants need not only to find inventive ways to stay cool, but they also require innovative strategies that allow them to grow their own food. Since 1985, Dmitry Ivanov has been researching hydroponic farming systems, a way to grow crops directly in nutrient-rich water. Among its many advantages, Dmitry remarks on the fact that hydroponics offer a decrease in water usage in agriculture. To grow 1 kilogram of tomatoes using intensive farming methods requires 400 liters of water, whereas hydroponic methods need only 70 liters. Nevertheless, climate change and land degradation will render all of Ivanov's efforts useless. Okay, so looking at this one, using our context, which is the one that doesn't fit the overall tone? So now let's take a look at our answer options. Since 1985, Dmitry Ivanov has been researching hydroponic farming systems, a way to grow crops directly in nutrient-rich water. Yeah, that sounds like the rest of it. Living in one of the warmest countries on Earth poses many challenges, as its inhabitants need not only to find inventive ways to stay cool, but they also require innovative strategies that allow them to grow their own food. Yeah, that's about the hydroponic farming systems. That looks good as well. Among its many advantages, Dmitry remarks on the fact that hydroponics offer a decrease in water usage in agriculture. To grow 1 kilogram of tomatoes using intensive farming methods requires 400 liters of water, whereas hydroponic methods need only 70 liters. That also looks good. Nevertheless, climate change and land degradation will render all of Ivanov's efforts useless. Okay, so in all of these, we're staying objective. Remember that word from our last one, staying to the facts, but we're also staying positive. And then we get this one, right? We're almost said it. It is, hey, all of these efforts of Ivanov are going to be useless, right? It's all going to fall apart anyway. That is taking a really negative tone. That does not fit with the rest of the passage. And therefore, that is our correct answer. So again, looking at tone, and especially sometimes, I know we don't have a lot of options here, as far as like we don't have a lot of time, but sometimes you do have to read a passage. All right, question number 18. Freight train with your miles of cars, collecting eclectic graffiti like scars, ghosts of innumerable nameless places, seen but looked past by thousands of faces. Which of the following is likely the genre, brand new word, of this passage? So what is a genre? A genre is the type of thing it is, of writing it is. So it could be just like genres of movies can be action, adventure, and comedy, and romance, and superhero films are its own genre now. For writing, we have genres too, right? Genres can include articles, they can include research essays, they can include poems, letters, book reviews, and fictional stories, just like we have here, right? So here, if you notice, this writing looks different than any other we've had, right? Number one, these are all really, really short lines, right? And they have no punctuation. There's no punctuation to be seen, and there's nothing connecting them, right? These we like to call stanzas. Stanzas are the paragraphs of poetry, right? They're short lines. They're often done with by pressing the enter key, so they're on a second line below it. Now, the second thing you're going to notice, cars and scars and places and faces. What do those do? Yeah, they rhyme. Now, not all of this type of, not all types of poems, which poems is our correct answer here, rhyme. Sometimes they do, right? Cars, scars, places, faces, they rhyme. Why do poems sometimes rhyme? It allows us to have a natural cadence to it, right? A natural flow. Why is it not a letter? Because they're not writing this to anyone. Usually letters would say dear and the recipient. Usually have a signature at the end. This doesn't do any of that. Book review, this is not a literature review. It's not looking at an article for an academic purpose. And it is, even though it is something that could be a fictional story, right? And poems can be fictional stories. The best possible answer is that poem. All right, so there we go. Looked at genre today and we read some poetry. We got creative with it. Okay, so now we're at question number 19. And for 19, we have a passage in front of us. And it asks, for whom is this passage probably being written? So for this one, we are looking at for whom, which means we're looking at analyzing who the audience of this passage should be. Now, with any sort of question like this, I then like to look at potential answers. All right, so the first one is parents. Second one are business owners. Next, we have engineers. Those are people that plan and design different things like bridges, or you could be an electrical engineer, biomedical engineer. And finally, teachers, which is my job, right? I'm a teacher. So let's read the passage and let's try to find any words or phrases that might pique our interest and might sort of decide who our audience is for this passage. During the summer, you must prepare properly when venturing outside in the heat. First and foremost, make sure you apply plenty of sunscreen. Any area of your skin that is exposed to the sun should have sunscreen. This includes your face, even if you're wearing a hat or sunglasses. Additionally, drink plenty of water. Whether you're inside or outside, always have water with you to drink. You could even make it a goal to drink so much every hour. Staying hydrated is key to good health and helps you avoid getting overheated. Last but not least, eat or snack frequently. When it's hot out, it can be easy to lose your appetite or become so engulfed in your activities that you go longer in between meals. It is a good idea to have a small snack like a granola bar with you at all times. Your body still needs nutrients, even in the heat. Make sure your family is prepared before spending the day outside this summer. So looking at this immediately, I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, I'm a teacher in summer break, but this isn't written to me. It's not about lesson plans or anything like that. So we can cross that off. It's not about any work that an engineer does, right? But there's really no key except for one word here. And that one word, I'm not sure if you caught it, is family, right? The minute I see family, I can cross all the rest of these off. and I can go directly to parents. All right, so there is question number 19. Our audience, because that word family, and because it doesn't fit any other ones, that option is going to be for parents. And we are on to the next one. Number 20. We are now 2 decades in, right? So here we have a little reading segment here, right? And it says, which of the following publications would most likely contain these sentences? A poetry anthology. An anthology would just simply be a collection of poems, like a book full of poems. A business memo, a stage play, or a scientific journal. Okay, now here we have a couple of really key things. First is that we have Molly and we have Stevie. Now, Molly says, so we have this stage direction, we have this line directly underneath. Have you seen my new white boots? I thought I'd left them here. And then Stevie says, yeah, I think your sister's wearing them. So this is what Molly's saying and Stevie is saying. Now, this would not be in a business memo. It does sort of have lines like the poem we saw before. They're kind of short, but so maybe we'll keep them in mind, that one. Stage play also definitely could be, but a scientific journal, no, that is not like the American Journal of Medicine, right? So here we're between the two. And the biggest thing here that we want to keep in mind, and our key here are, again, Molly and Stevie. These are the lines that they would be reading on stage, which means that this is a stage play. All right, so there we go. That is what it looks like. You might have read like Shakespeare in middle school or high school, or you might have read something like Fences or Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, or any of those other plays, and you would see things like that. So that is a stage play. We're going to move on to question number 21. 21, we have another large paragraph, and then it says, which of the following sentences contains information this time that does not belong in the paragraph? All right, and we have 4 different options here. So let's read these options, and then we'll take a look at our passage. So, in order to keep a horse as domesticated animals, proper care and training are necessities from the beginning. You should probably feed your horse. A newborn horse or foal will often be hesitant to interact with humans. And finally, though it is time-consuming, caring for and training a horse early on can have significant benefits for both the horse and the owner. Now, if you know the answer, I know the answer from this one, just because one of these sentences does not read like the others, you can go ahead and select that now. But you may also need to look at the passage above. So let's now read the passage, looking for which sentence does not fit in with information with the other ones. So, in order to keep horses as domesticated animals, proper care and training are necessities from the beginning. A newborn horse or foal will often be hesitant to interact with humans. So let's take a step back. We're looking at care and training of horses. And sometimes they're hard to train as babies, as newborns, because they're hesitant to interact with humans. So far, so good. However, it is crucial to gently attempt this interaction starting in the first few days of life and continuing on a daily basis to familiarize the horse with humans. Still talking about horse training, we're in good shape. This helps make further training for specific skills such as racing or working cattle much easier because trust has been established. Good. You should probably feed your horse. So far, that doesn't read like the rest of it. So let's leave a little bit of a mark here in red, right? We'll highlight that sentence. This is what we're questioning. Depending on the available resources, horses may eat grass, hay, grain, oats, vegetables, or even a mixture of those through feed from a store. Okay, so that continues. Let's put a question mark next to that one, because that one continues on about, it's no longer about training, but it does sound like the rest of it, all right? Though it is time-consuming, caring for and training a horse early on can have a significant benefit for both the horse and the owner. So now we're back to training. We're in good shape. So we're really looking at, you should probably feed your horse, and any of these about feed. Now, here's the interesting thing about the TEAS and about this question. not all of these sentences are in here, right? So if I scroll down, notice that the sentence about the types of feed, I'll highlight it again just to show you. This one about depending on available resources, horses may eat. That sentence, that is nowhere to be found down here. It's nowhere. It's missing, right? We only have, you should proudly feed your horse, which is the other one we were questioning, which means that is the correct answer. So sometimes not all of the sentences will be in there on your exam day. So that is our next question done and dusted. We're going to keep on moving on. Question number 22. Which of the following would likely act as a transition sentence? So a transition is when we move between different things, right? It could be ideas, it could be sections, it could be different types of tone, right? So we're going to read these and we're looking for which one is making a move here, all right? So ultimately, no one is certain whether or not life exists elsewhere. Have you considered the possibility of life on other planets? On the contrary, some people believe that life forms exist on other planets. And finally, scientists previously identified what appeared to be tracks on the moon. Now here with transitions, we often have what we call a transition word. Transition words can be something like however, or due to this, or taking into account other things. And for this one, we have two phrases that are at the beginning of the sentence. We have ultimately, and we have on the contrary. Now, ultimately means the last. So, biggest thing here, where they're trying to trick you, is you have these two here. This one would be a closing or conclusion sentence. And this one, on the contrary, means that we are switching from one idea, probably the naysayers, to another idea, which in this case would be people that believe that life forms exist on other planets. So that's moving from idea to idea or transitioning. So that is our correct answer. All right, so there's another one. Done. All right, so transition sentence, look for those transition words. We have a whole lesson on transitions on nursehub.com to give you a more in-depth explanation if you need it. All right, so there we go. Question number 22. Okay, so now we're on question 23. And question 23 is asking us to take a look at the writing process. Now, the T7 has a renewed focus on the writing process. T6 had a little bit of it. T7's focusing on it a little bit more. Now, the writing process is the steps you take from idea or assignment all the way through to publication. And publication could mean turning it into your teacher or professor. It could mean publishing it in a medical journal. It could be publishing a book, okay? So here we have a bunch of different steps. We have brainstorming, publishing, writing, and proofreading. Okay, so what do these steps mean? Now, brainstorming is taking a look at your assignment and trying to find out your approach to it. So it is looking at the ideas. That could be making an organizer, that could be doing an idea map, there's a lot of different ways that you can brainstorm, and everybody brainstorms different. Publishing is the very act of submitting and also giving it to your audience. That could be your teacher. That could be a journal. That could be a magazine. That could be a publisher as far as like a poetry anthology that we talked about before. Writing is the very act of putting pen to paper or typing it. And finally, proofreading is making sure everything looks and sounds right. So that is really the editing process, but editing more in the form of grammar. So all your spelling, punctuation, all that fun stuff. Okay. So looking at it, if we have idea to publication, this one right here, brainstorming. We're looking at ideas, right? Ideas, first step in the writing process. That means that is the correct answer, right? Publishing is going to be the last step, right? So if we have this as 1, this would be 4 in this case. And then afterwards you would go writing, and then you would go proofreading. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, and 4 as far as our steps in the writing process go. So that's the writing process. We have a whole lesson on the writing process. It's just good to know, just for when you get assignments, also when you're in nursing school, right? Yeah, so that first step is brainstorming. So here we are, question number 24. Which of the following sentences would likely act as a supporting detail? Now, what is a supporting detail in a sentence? Okay, that is looking at adding in additional and oftentimes specific information. Now, this one's tricky. Why? Because we don't have a paragraph here. We have 4 sentences here, right? And the tough part is these ones are not in order, right? So they're not in order at all. So we have to read these knowing they're not in order and knowing that they could even be parts of different paragraphs. All right, so let's take a look at these. Not only do people come to watch the birds, but they also photograph the birds they see. That's sentence number 1. If you travel along the East Coast, chances are that you'll spot several flying friends along the way. 3 is the eastern coast of the United States is home to over 1,000 species of birds. And finally, number 4, the most common type of bird seen in this area is the red-bellied woodpecker. So let's break down these sentences. First one, not only do people come to watch the birds, but they also photograph the birds they see. This is moving from one idea to another. And we know what that means. That is a transition sentence. Now, we talked about transition sentences earlier. They don't always need to say next or following up or on the contrary. Sometimes it's just moving from one idea to the next. The next one, if you travel along the East Coast, chances are you'll spot several flying friends along the way. This one is introducing a topic. So this one we would talk as an intro sentence. Why? Because this one could be the first sentence of a new paragraph, right? Hey, you're in the East Coast, you could see several flying friends. How many are there? What are their names? Et cetera, et cetera. The eastern coast of the United States is home to over 1,000 species of birds. If we were taking a less narrative approach and a little bit more an objective approach, like we'd see in something like an article, this could be another introductory sentence or sometimes we call these topic sentences as well. And that leaves our last one, right? This is our supporting detail. Why? Because it's adding in additional and specific information. What is the additional and specific information? In this case, the name of a common bird that you see there. So that one is our supporting detail. So there we go. Question number 24 out of 37. We only have about a dozen left. So let's choose our red-bellied woodpecker and we'll move on to question number 25. Okay. My doctor prescribed an antibiotic to fight my infection. Which of the following defines the prefix anti as used in the word antibiotic in the sentence above? Okay, so here, biggest thing, we are looking at the prefix anti in the word antibiotic. All right, and it's even in this sentence here as well. Now you could use these context clues and see that it's fighting and going with it from there, But really quick, this is also asking us about our word parts, which oftentimes come from Greek or Latin. And in these sort of cases, we are looking at the prefix, meaning before. We are looking at the root word. And we are looking at the suffix. And in this case, again, we are looking for the prefix. All right. So one way to look at it is trying to say, okay, what does an antibiotic do? Well, we know here an antibiotic is working to fight the infection. Okay. So when we look at this, we can use process elimination and sort of talk it out. Okay. So it's not looking at something after the infection, right? That doesn't really make sense. And after would be post, like post game, right? So that is not our right answer. Against, against, fight. We fight against things. Let's keep that one in mind. We won't touch that one for now. With, well, it's not working with the infection. It's fighting it. All right, and this one would be prefix con, right? And so that one is incorrect. And finally, for, well, it's antibiotics are not working for the infection. It's not helping the infection out. It's kind of doing the opposite. And there's actually no real prefix for. So this one's also incorrect. And against is our prefix anti-establishment, antibiotic, and this one is our correct answer. All right, so there's question number 25, right? We're already 25 in. You are doing so well. If you need to take another quick break, great time to do it, right? We're 25 in, got about 12 to go. Our last real push here, okay? Question number 26. In which of the following does the suffix, just talked about these, suffix again goes at the end, creates a word that has a different meaning than the root word? Again, so let's write this one more time. We have prefixes, we have our root word, and then we have our suffixes. And we're asking ourselves, which way does the suffix change the root word? All right, so we have a bunch of different words here. We have phalanges, we have examined, we have ovaries, and we have intestinal. And we're asking, which one has a different meaning? So I love to write these without the suffix, okay? So for phalanges, this would be phalange. Now, without the S, this is just changing it from a single to a plural, right? So it's not really changing the word meaning here. So we can go ahead and cross that one off. Now, examine, our root word here, without our suffix, is just looking at examined. Now, ask yourself, did this word meaning change? No, it's just really moving it from the past to the present, okay? So there's another one. We can cross it off. For ovaries, we are looking at, they might be asking, why does it not have IE? Remember, in some words in English, we have a Y at the end and we want to make a plural, we change the Y to the IES, okay? That one makes a plural again, just like phalanges. So we are also going to cross that one off, and that one leaves us with intestinal. Okay, so without our suffix, that would be intestine. Now the intestine is the piece of our digestive tract, right? Intestinal means relating to the intestines. So this one's moving from the noun intestine to an adjective intestinal, something describing it, all right? Which means this is changing the word meaning, which means that is our right answer. All right, so looking at a little bit of word parts, and again, this one's a little bit more like a puzzle. You have to think a little bit outside the box. I find talking it through to myself is super, super helpful in questions like this. But the answer is intestinal. 27 out of 37. Oh my goodness, we have 10 left. We are rocking. All right, which of the following is the meaning of the suffix? Again, the suffix again. So another word part question. Algia. All right, so we are looking at the suffix. I'm gonna make that one a different color just to make it a little bit more clear. Make it red. Algia. Now, I love to ask myself in this sort of question, what words do I know that include that suffix or that ending? Now, I'm not a medical person, right? But I do watch a lot of television, and I do see a lot of ads for medication helping with fibromyalgia. And I know that fibromyalgia has that same exact suffix. So all I have to ask myself is, what does fibromyalgia mean? And then taking a look to see which one of our four options, spreading rapidly, a person who treats pain, having to do with pain, or having to do with plants, which one fits? Okay. Now, I know based on the advertising I watch, and you might have different options, that fibromyalgia is some sort of a disorder that causes pain and tenderness throughout the entire body. It's very uncomfortable, as well as a lot of fatigue, like that exhaustion, and some trouble sleeping. So I know it focuses on pain. Okay. Now we can use a process elimination. Take a look at these. Now, spreading rapidly. Well, I'm not sure if fibromyalgia spreads rapidly or not. I'm not that good of a medical expert, so let's hold off on that one for now. A person who treats pain. Well, no, the disorder is about pain. It's not about the doctors and healthcare workers and nurses that treat it. So that doesn't work. It might be like fibromyalgist, right? And oftentimes that IST is our ending for people whose job it is to treat things. Having to do with pain, ooh, that's another big time question one, so we'll keep that blank. And having to do with plants. Now, with this one, you might be thinking, oh yeah, algae. I know that word algae, that works, but unfortunately that is a trick. ATI is trying to trick you because this is also the incorrect answer. So is it spreading rapidly or is it having to do with pain? Now, I know that, again, fibromyalgia is something that causes pain and tenderness throughout the whole body. I know that. I'm not sure if it spreads rapidly or not, so I'm going to go with my gut, and my gut in this case is correct, where algia is something having to do with pain. All right, so that's sometimes talking it out. And again, when you have something that's a suffix, identifying other words that you know, or if ATI gives you a full sentence or a passage, using those can be super helpful as well, using your context clues in order to answer these questions. Just like in this one, right? In this one, we have a sentence here that we're going to use our context clues. Now, what a context clue means is looking at the other pieces of that sentence or paragraph in order to make sense of our question. So our question is, which of the following best describes the word susceptible based on its use in this sentence? Now, you might know what susceptible means, and you just go ahead and answer that because you know the definition. But if not, you can use our context clues, which means the rest of the words in our sentence, to decide whether it means to be aware of, subject to a force or influence, resistant to a force of influence, or shielded or protected from. So let's go ahead and read our sentence now. Since he didn't have much of a backbone, Brian was susceptible to peer pressure. Okay, so we have some really key looks at our context clues here. Since he didn't have much of a backbone, Now, what does that mean? That means that, okay, you're kind of going to go with the flow. You might, if somebody says like, hey, we should do this thing, you're gonna be like, yes. My mom always said, if all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it? My question is like, how high was the bridge? I was very susceptible to peer pressure as a kid, right? And then we have our keyword here. Brian was susceptible to peer pressure. Now, what does peer pressure mean? Peer pressure means that all your friends are doing something, your peers, the people that you work with, it could be your age group, and are you going to do that thing or not? Now, because he does not have much of a backbone, means he is susceptible to peer pressure. Now, let's go through our answer options. Our first one, to be aware of. That means like, okay, I see the peer pressure. That's all it means. I see it, right? I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it means to sort of just like see it and acknowledge that its existence. So that one does not work here. Subject to a force or influence. Now, to subject means you are going to do it, right? So that one does kind of sound like it, but again, there might be a better option out there. So let's hold off for now. We don't want to make a decision yet. Resistant to a force or influences. That means you are going to say no to it, right? No. That's the opposite of what Brian does, right? He is susceptible to it. He's going to do that sort of things. He's not going to say no. And finally, shielded or protected from. That means that he has a great friend or somebody that's saying no for him. And unfortunately, that's also the incorrect answer. So what's our best one? Subject to a force or influence. And how do we find that? We found that using our context clues. All right, so there we go. Question number 28 of 37, done and dusted using those context clues. And again, just talking it out, going through our answer options. Question number 29. Which of the following sentence is punctuated? Get in sentence punctuation, out of sentence punctuation correctly. And we have 4 sentences here. When exercising, it is important to stretch before, during, and after a workout. I ate sushi, noodles, a hamburger, and granola today. Veronica needs to purchase various plants such as a monstera, a fig tree, and a rose bush. Or Shan purchased items for the lab such as beakers, syringes, and gloves. Now, the very first thing I notice here is all of these have a period at the end. So those are all the same, which means, hey, we don't need to worry about them, right? So we can just erase that. We are looking at in-sentence punctuation. Now, if you notice on all of these, right? On all of the 4, we are looking again at that list of 3 or more items. Now, do you remember from before? What goes in between those? Yeah, our commas. Our commas, and especially that Oxford comma. Okay, so now we want to look for our commas, and we'll mark them down with our handy highlighting tool. When exercising, comma, it is important to stretch before, during, and after a workout. So now notice we have before, during, and after. That's our list for 3. We don't have any commas in there. That's not our right answer. Let's move on. Next one is about what the person ate that day. And that person ate sushi, and there's the comma there, so we're looking good. Ooh, noodles, a hamburger, and granola. So again, that has 4 items. Now, noodles, a hamburger, and granola, those have no commas there, so that is not correct either, right? Veronica needs to purchase various plants such as a monstera, a fig tree. So there we go. We have a monstera is our first option, first thing on our list, a fig tree, and a rosebush. And those ones all have our commas. So we're going to hold on to that one for now. And finally, Shan purchased items for the lab such as beakers, syringes. Now, beakers and syringes, 2 separate items. Those don't have the comma, even though after syringes we do. So unfortunately, that is not the correct answer. So that leaves us with our 3 options of a monstera, a fig tree, with the Oxford comma there, that's the Oxford comma, and a rosebush, all with commas separating them. So that is our correct answer. We are crushing it. Again, that's another list of 3. So it's important to find out, okay, what are these sentences doing different? All right, especially when they're not in a paragraph like that or when they're not the same sentence, because those can get a little tricky. All right, question number 30. Oh my goodness, we are in as far as first digits go, we're in our last one. So we're 30 through 37 and we're done for today. You're doing great. Blank, sometimes difficult to maintain one's optimism. Which of the following options correctly completes the given sentence? Okay, so we have it's with no apostrophe, it's with an apostrophe, and finally, I. Okay, now biggest thing is, a lot of people will be looking at I as perhaps the best one, but the biggest thing is remain one optimism. That does not follow the I form, so that one we can cross off immediately as not being correct. All right, if it said, I sometimes find it difficult to maintain my optimism, that'd be right, but it's not there. All right, so now we have 3 different forms of it. Now, the biggest thing is, if you're reading this out loud, you might say, it is sometimes difficult to maintain one's optimism. And that would be a great sentence, right? So we know it's some form of it, because that time we're using a contraction. Now, for contractions, what we do is we take 2 words. So we could say words like can and not, and then we combine them into the word can. Now, you might be saying, well, that O is missing there. So what we do is we put an apostrophe where that should be. All right. Now, for it, we have it is, which transfers to it. And that is how we write the contraction. So it is sometimes difficult to maintain one's optimism. It's, all right? And that is our answer for number 30. So for number 30, we were looking at contractions. 31. Which of the following is the meaning of the prefix? So let's highlight that prefix, trans. Now, remember, again, we have our prefix, which is what we're focusing on. We have our root word, and we have our suffix. So remember, prefix goes at the beginning. That's what we're focusing on here. Now, unlike the algae question, here we have no word, which means we gotta make our own. So what are words that we know that start with the word trans? Now, I like to think of words like transcontinental, or something like a transit system, like a train or a subway or bus. And I try to see, okay, what makes these 2 things the same? Because they both have that same prefix. Well, transcontinental doesn't mean going again across a continent or again on a train. That doesn't make any sense. So we can cross that one off. Now, it doesn't mean going across the continent or across a city or a state. Well, maybe. So let's put the question mark there for now. We're not sure. There might be a better one. Doesn't mean going between a continent or between the city. Oh, that's another big question mark there for me. Doesn't mean going above. Well, no, because a transit system, sometimes a train goes below the ground. So there we go. Cross 2 good ones off. Now, which one is better? Now, it does not mean going between 2 continents all the time. Sometimes it could be a transcontinental flight might be going from, let's say, Boston to LA. You're going across the continent, okay? So that means that across is our correct answer. So sometimes when we don't have one, a word example for something like the prefix trans, we have to make our own. So you just have to ask yourself, all right, where have I seen that word part before and how can I write it? Question number 32. Oof, we're going to be like 5 left. This is great. Which of the following sentences is punctuated correctly? All right, so there we are looking at punctuation again, okay? And we have 4 completely different questions. Now, first thing I notice, all of them have the end punctuation. So that means we're looking at in-sentence punctuation again. All right, so here we go. Although Janine needed to stay calm, she could not stop crying. I woke up at 5 o'clock because I had to hit the gym, but I was too tired to go. Nina needs to take better notes in class. She never has enough content to study. My mother told me to meet her at the gym, but she didn't tell me what time. All right, now here we are looking at 2 separate clauses. Okay, and we are looking at these clauses that are connected. And when you connect 2 clauses, you need some type of punctuation. In some cases, it might be a semicolon. But in most cases, in this one, comma to separate them, right? So look at, although Janine needed to stay calm, she could not stop crying. So here we need that comma right there to separate clause 1 and clause 2. And if you notice, there is a little pause there as well when you read it out loud to yourself. So that one we can cross off as not being the correct answer. Now it's the next one. I woke up at 5 o'clock because I had to hit the gym, but was too tired to go. So you notice that pause there, and there we have the comma. So we'll keep that one open for now. Nina needs to take better notes in class. She never has enough time to study. So there again, we pause there and we don't have any punctuation. So that one's also incorrect. And finally, we have, my mother told me to meet her at the gym, but she didn't tell me what time. Again, we need the comma there because we pause in between our 2 clauses, which leaves that one as incorrect and this one as our right answer. All right. So again, looking at the pause between commas, and again, even if you didn't know what a clause was, simply reading these out loud to yourself is super, super helpful. And that was question number 32. Question number 33. Emily drew a circle in the middle of her page. She wrote the topic inside and began drawing lines that protruded out from the circle. On each line, she wrote an idea that related to the topic. Which element of the writing process is Emily performing? So first, let's do a little just jot down a quick little visual of what we have here. So it says Emily drew a circle in the middle of her page. Let's draw a circle here. Okay. She wrote the topic inside, so we'll put T for topic, and began drawing lines that protrude out from the circle. And on each line, she wrote an idea, right, I for idea, that related back to that topic. Okay, this looks like what we like to call an idea or a mind map. That's an idea map, or sometimes we like to call it a mind map. Some people will call it a spider map because it looks like a little spider or a spider web. Okay. Now, we know brainstorming from our last question is where we find our ideas. Drafting is the actual act of writing. Now, revising is not proofreading. All right, some people get those confused. Revising is actually doing what we like to do is change the writing. We're not editing yet. This would be more like the order of our paragraphs or organization, maybe adding another piece. And finally, citing sources. That is, remember when we saw that before? The 35 to 47 to avoid plagiarism. All right, so which one is this doing? Well, yeah, we have an idea map. We are looking at different ideas. That is our brainstorm. That is our brainstorming. And that is our correct answer. So let's erase what we have here with our little beautiful mind map. Again, some mind maps, when you're writing them out, can take up like a full page, sometimes even multiple pages. I had a student once grab my massive easel paper. It's going to be about 3 feet long. It was using that as their idea map. It was really cool. All right, question number 34. The business blank once bragged about success is now failing. Okay, and we have which of the following accurately completes the sentence above. We have who, whom, that, or which. Okay, a lot of English speakers and a lot of English writers really get confused. Okay, so let's break down what each of these is used for. All right, so who is for a person or people performing an action. Now we have to ask the question, is the business a person? No, it's not. It's an organization. So let's cross that one off. Why? When do we use whom? That is also for a person, but that is more in the objective, or in some cases, the formal. Now again, if the first one's for a person, we already decided a business is not a person, so we're going to cross that off. Now that is a pronoun to describe another specific noun. So this one is for a specific noun. And again, a noun, person, place, thing, or idea. A business is a thing. Yeah, it looks pretty good, but again, we're not sure. We have to go for the last one, which is for non-essential clauses. Right? Now, if we just had the business which once bragged about success is now failing, no, we need this second part here, right? The second part is essential. So unfortunately, this one does not work as well. And that way, we are looking at that. The business that once bragged about success is now failing. Now, of course, if you did not know those rules, you can also just read this out loud to yourself. You might have a really good chance at doing it. But again, studying, knowing the grammar rules, again, we have full video lessons on that to really give you a helping hand. It's going to be your best case scenario. All right, we have question number 35. And question number 35 is again, looking at the writing process. Again, writing process, brand new for TEAS. All right. And we have a scenario here with Molly, our friend Molly. Now, let's take a look at what Molly is doing here and decide which step of the writing process she is performing. All right. So Molly is reading her manuscript. So that's the very first thing I'm looking at. She already has a manuscript. Now, a manuscript is another way to say Molly's reading her writing. Could be an essay, could be a play, right? And she's decided to delete a paragraph. She's decided to delete one paragraph. She's decided to move another paragraph, and she's adding examples. So she is doing 3 different things here. Now from this, we want to decide which step of the writing process is Molly completing. All right, now proofreading is actually working on editing. That's making edits, but that's usually looking at grammar, making sure everything is done perfectly. Now, is she changing her grammar? No, she's not changing like her spelling or punctuation. She's more moving things around. So that one does not work for us. Number brainstorming is about ideas. That was our mind map from earlier. Now, Molly already has a manuscript, so we're way past the idea phase, so we can also cross that one off. Now, drafting is the actual act of writing. Now, is Molly doing some writing? Yes. She's adding examples. So let's keep that one for now. Now, finally, revising. That is making changes from one draft to another. Now, it does sound like she's making way more changes than simply just writing, right? Because remember, she's deleting the paragraph, she's moving a paragraph. So that is our correct answer. All right, so sometimes just talking it through, trying to visualize what Molly's doing. Maybe you remember doing that yourself, or you've done it yourself recently. Be like, all right, what step was I on? All right, but this one for Molly is the revising process. All right, we're on question number 36. We have 2 left to go, and this one is asking which of the following words is spelled correctly. And we have a lot of different options for the word rhythm. Now, first, this word is one of the trickiest words in the English language, right? It is really, really tricky, and a lot of people have a hard time spelling this word. Actually, if you Google spelling rhythm, you'll see a million different articles about how to spell it and the history of it. If you want to completely be a nerd about it, you could, right? And it proved that I did. Now, there is a really interesting way to remember. All right, so first, when you're studying, you can just simply memorize it, or you might remember this little tiny mnemonic device, which is radio has your 2 hips moving. And if you highlight the first letter of each, you have our word rhythm. Now, this one's so confusing because it does not lack a traditional vowel, because we have sometimes Y here, but that is how you spell rhythm. Rhythm is also right here, and that means that is our correct answer. So radio has your 2 hips moving. It's really silly, but it does work. All right, so radio has your 2 hips moving. So you remember that one? If not, just there are lists of non-traditional spellings of words and tricky spellings of words, and rhythm is one of them. All right, last question. We made it together. All right, let's dive in. Which sentence is structured, which really means which sentence is correct here. So which one is structured correctly? Running down the street, the tree caught my attention. Having finished the exam, the paper was submitted to the professor. She carefully arranged the flowers in a vase, ensuring each stem was positioned just right. Or, having finished my assignment, the television show was enjoyed. Okay, so let's dive into each of these. So let's start with running down the street. The tree caught my attention. All right, so the biggest question here, and for all of these, we are looking at modifiers we've gone over before. Things that modify, right? Things that change. And again, we're looking at dangling modifiers, right? So it's asking, like, what is it doing? So for the very first one, running down the street, the tree caught my attention. The biggest question here is who is running down the street, right? Who's doing that running? Who's doing the running here, right? Running's our modifier. Who's doing the running? So that is not our correct answer because it leaves that question. Having finished the exam, the paper was submitted to the professor. Again, with this one, having finished the exam, who finished the exam, right? Is it the paper here finished the exam? I'm not sure who finished the exam, so that one's not right. Now this one, she carefully arranged the flowers in a vase, ensuring each stem was positioned just Right. So here we have carefully arranged the flowers. We have carefully arranged. Now we know who carefully arranged the flowers because it's she. But again, so far I feel good about this one, but let's move on to the last because there might be one better. Having finished my assignment, the television show was enjoyed. Again, having finished the assignment, it's another massive question there of who. And so we're also going to cross that one off, which means ding, ding, ding. Very last question. We know who arranged those flowers. It is she who arranged those flowers. That is our correct answer. And that was our very last question that we have together. So let's mark it off, get our quiz summary, finish the quiz, and we're there. All right, thank you all so much.